Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. We have a lot to discuss on today's episode. We have Nick Chubb coming off the PUP list potentially, practicing this week. We'll tell you everything you need to know about that. Some Amari Cooper trade rumors. So a lot of ground to cover on today's episode. But rapid fire, I just want to run through my final thoughts from week 4 after rewatching the game, kind of letting everything settle in, decompress. First takeaway I've got is Deshaun Watson is not Superman, and the Browns need him to be Superman. And a lot of the fan base, and I can understand why, believes he should be Superman because when you give a guy $230 million, almost $250 million, and you give up 3 first-round draft picks, the expectation is you are Superman. I think we can all somewhat come to a middle ground on Deshaun Watson's not as bad as people kind of made him out to be early on. Plus, I've long stated on this channel, Watson gets off to slow starts in his career. This is not a new thing this year. Historically, he gets off to slow starts. So I'm not surprised that he did not have a great outing against the Dallas Cowboys. But he has gotten better every single week. And to me, it is clear Watson is not bad. He's not terrific. Like, he's not elite. He doesn't look like an MVP candidate. He is not overcoming the issues in front of him. But in his defense, he can't force the receivers to catch the football. He can't force DeJuan Jones to block his guy. Like, there are issues that are simply out of Watson's control. And sure, it would be nice if he, with that big paycheck he gets, overcomes those issues. But it's clear to me at this point, Watson is somewhat rounding into form of he's a good quarterback. If he could get a little bit of help, he'd be a lot better, but he needs that help. And that's not really what we all signed up for, given the assets going out the door to get him and the contract to get him, but that's where we are right now. I don't think this team is better without him. I don't think he's going anywhere as long as he's healthy. I don't think the Browns are trying to move on from Watson. I think the Browns recognize we've got a good quarterback. Sure, he may not be as good as we thought or hoped to overcome those issues, but like just one play, but what more can he do when he throws the ball right to Amari Cooper's chest? Like, that was a perfect pass. And that, I feel like, sums up a lot of the issues the Browns offense have had this year. Second, final thought coming out of this loss. Amari Cooper, I think, might just be broken. And I know there's been a lot of chatter that, hey, maybe the Brandon Ayuk trade rumors involving Cooper kind of got into his head a little bit. I struggle to really believe that. I don't think Cooper mid-route is thinking, can't believe they fucking tried to trade me for Ayuk. No way. Like, I refuse to believe as he's going up to catch it. It's like Brandon Ayuk's face is on the football. No. Now, that doesn't excuse that he's gotten off to a horrible start, and I cannot fathom it. I really can make zero sense of it. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you I was wrong if this goes even more downhill. I thought Cooper would play even better than he did the last 2 years in Cleveland. But it's not trending that direction. Hopefully this is a bad take and this ages poorly. But yeah, we're a quarter of the way into the season, and I've got 3 bad games from Cooper and 1 good game. Which one's the outlier? Third and final thought. The offensive line, you ready for this? A little bit better. And that's mostly because the bar was so low, it's hard not to improve. But I do think, and just bear with me for a moment, and then we're going to get to the Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper stuff, might have actually been better in week 4 than previous weeks. If we just want to go off the numbers, look at the improvement. I mean, 25 pressures week 1 against the Cowboys, down to 3. So some level of corrections have been made. I don't think it's good enough. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the offensive line miscues come at really poor times, like when Watson was about to unload a deep pass to Amari Cooper, but DeJuan Jones lets his guy by, and the pass isn't quite on target. Or when Nick Harris just snaps it erroneously, and the Browns go from 1st and 10 inside the red zone to 2nd and 16. Or when Nick Harris, although still a BS call, gets a holding call as the Browns put the go-ahead touchdown on the board. Like, they came at very inconvenient times in week 4, but they were less frequent than the previous 3 weeks. So, progress. But will the Browns make the playoffs? We're going to talk all about Nick Chubb and his status, along with Cooper and some trade rumors out there from Adam Schefter. But the pinned comment for today's episode, Will Cleveland make the playoffs at 1-3? Shoot your shot down below while this YouTube ad rolls. So some updates to get to. Nick Chubb, Kevin Stefanski, speaking to the media on Monday over Zoom, said they expect Nick Chubb to practice on Wednesday. What does this mean? The Browns are opening Nick Chubb's practice window. So he will have 21 days to come off the PUP list. If the Browns do not activate him to the 53-man roster, then he is going to spend the rest of the season on the PUP list. So he is not off just yet. We're not completely out of the woods, but I do not believe the Browns would open up his 21-day practice window if they were not confident that he could be able to return to the roster in said 21-day window. A lot of times you see guys come off the PUP list in the middle of the year, similar to cases like Chubb, and it does not mean they are ready to roll for the very first game up ahead on the schedule. I would be a little surprised if Chubb plays as early as this Sunday against the Commanders, but I think they want to give Chubb 2 weeks of practice. It could be all 3 weeks of available practice going into week 5, week 6, week 7, and then week 8, they kind of max out their free practice days to make sure he's 100%, he's NFL game speed ready, and then they toss him out there. So I think we shouldn't assume that Chubb's going to be available and playing as early as this Sunday. I'm eyeing the Eagles game 2 weeks from now. But if Nick Chubb saves the season, build the statue that day. If we see Chubb come back and somehow resurrect this team, get the offense out of this funk, and it leads to an offensive explosion because the Browns finally have a ground game that can be respected. Oh boy. Those 24 jerseys are going to fly off the shelves. Which, by the way, after the Browns lose to the Raiders 20-16, blowing a 10-0 lead, blowing an early lead for a second straight week, they've actually had leads in all 3 losses. Yeah, they led against the Cowboys, did they not? They scored a field goal, and then the Giants, and now this game. So not very good at playing with the lead here. But leave it to the Browns, by the way, for great PR work to go, I know you guys are all pissed off that we're 1-3 and we just lost to the Raiders, but Nick Chubb's practicing on Wednesday. Make us all look over here when the real story is over there. So yes, Chubb expected to practice on Wednesday. That is the belief. That is the expectation. Does not mean he is going to play on Sunday. He's still not really on the roster. He's kind of in no man's land here. He's allowed to practice. Doesn't count towards a roster spot, but if he does not get elevated to the roster after 21 days, he is out for the rest of the year on the reserve PUP list. We're going to talk about Amari Cooper next up on the show, but a quick shout out to our sponsor today, Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. One thing I enjoy about Game Time is their all-in pricing option. When you toggle this, it shows you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We need to have a tough conversation. It is that time. We're 4 weeks into the season. I thought week 3 was a tremendous outing from Cooper. 2 touchdowns, handful of grabs, a lot of yards. Okay, the first 2-week funk is behind him. And then he showed us he saved the worst for week 4 with an interception that, probably cost him the game. The Raiders take this. If Cooper holds on to this football, the Browns have 1st and 10 around the Raiders' 35-ish. And the Raiders turned around from this pick and punched it in for 6. Did they not? I mean, we're talking about like a 10-point swing here. And the Browns not even escape with a victory, but probably win with a decent cushion too. But that drop, I know it's one bad play, and I'm probably making a little bit too big of a deal out of one play, but it's not just one play, right? There was the drop against the Cowboys. There's a drop against the Jags. Like, there's a lot of bad plays here. And they're not just like 50-50 balls. They are, fundamental, as routine as it gets. So, when it comes to talking about trading Amari Cooper, while he has not been great, like I just kind of went on a little rant about, I'm not at the stage of trading him just yet. And I don't think the Browns are there either, because if they were to trade Amari Cooper, to me that signals they are raising the French flag and surrendering. Sorry to all of our French viewers. For me, I feel like Andrew Berry at 1-3 is not going to throw in the towel on this year just yet. And it's not like they have a bunch of young wide receivers that are waiting to break out and develop, right? They don't have some second-round pick who's kind of buried on their bench, who's only getting 10 snaps a game because Cooper, Judy, and Moore are all ahead of him. It's not quite like the DPJ, Cedric Tillman scenario we saw last year, because you're talking about moving on from your wide receiver 1, not your wide receiver 3. But Adam Schefter, he was on the Pat McAfee show, and he mentioned how the Chiefs, who, if you didn't see, lost Rashee Rice, or believe they lost Rashee Rice, depending on when you're watching this, it may or may not be confirmed, to a torn ACL. Hollywood Brown is already out for the season before it even began. So you're basically down, from Kansas City's standpoint, your top 2 receivers going into the season. The Chiefs have made wide receiver acquisitions the last 2 years at the NFL trade deadline. Last year, they brought back the speedy return man from the Jets who caught the touchdown in overtime, and I'm blanking on his name, and you're all yelling it at me right now. But Mecole Hardman. But the Chiefs could be looking at the situation right here and thinking, we really need a wide receiver. Like I just said, though, I don't think the Browns are at the stage of accepting defeat on the season. And trading Amari Cooper, I think, would be a sign of we're going to kind of pack it up a little bit, or we're at least going to start looking to the future, because there's no way the Browns feel like they are going to go to New Orleans this year without Amari Cooper and voluntarily move on from him. I don't expect to see any movement for 3 weeks, right? The NFL trade deadline is November 5th. So we have 5 weeks until then. We have a lot of ground to get to cover. I think the Browns are going to give it the next 3 weeks to see if they can put together a postseason push. If they were to lose on Sunday against the Commanders, we're talking about a 1-4 team that I still think Andrew Berry would not quit on, because trading Cooper is not just, moving on from a player, but you're also sending a big message to the locker room of, yeah, we're going to be sellers. We're not going to stand pat and try and keep it together and figure it out. So if after the next 3 weeks the Browns come out of it 0-3, then yeah, they're going to probably start stripping parts down. If they come out of the next 3 weeks 1-2, we're talking about a team that is then, 2-5, right? 1-3, 2-5. If they come out of the next 3 weeks 2-1 or 3-0, then no way they're trading Cooper at that point. But I think they're going to let the next 3 weeks play out. I don't think the Chiefs either are going to be rushing to make a deal. They probably want to see if they can get anything going from, they're probably running out of patience with, but guys like Sky Moore and other players on their roster, they want to look internally first for replacements. And after 2 weeks that they discover, all right, the replacement for Rashee Rice is not on this roster, then you start looking external. So I don't think the Browns or the Chiefs are going to be heating up trade talks over the next 2 weeks. I think they're going to give both sides a little bit longer. Browns want to see if they can put something together here and rattle off a couple of wins. Chiefs don't want to just rush to just give away assets, give away currency to a GM before even giving their own guys a shot. So, with that all being said, if a trade were to happen, I think this is a rough idea for what it could look like. I tossed and turned about Kansas City giving up a third. I don't think they would. Now, it is important to note that when the Browns restructured Amari Cooper's contract, they brought his base salary down to essentially a minimum of about $1.6 million. When you make a trade for a player, you are only taking on their remaining base salary. Now, you take a player's base salary and you divide it by 17 for 17 game checks. So whenever the Chiefs trade, if they trade whatever for Amari Cooper, if 5, 6, 7 weeks have already gone by, they only have to pick up the remaining tab on that base salary for the checks that have not been cashed and paid out yet. So it's not going to cost Kansas City or any other team for that matter very much at all. It'll cost them nearly nothing from a financial standpoint. So when it comes to, do they have cap space? Yes, everyone has cap space to trade for Amari Cooper. He will cost you pennies compared to other players. But would you do this trade? 4th and a 6th. I think that's probably what you can expect to get for Cooper. One, he has not looked so good this year that I feel like other teams would be dying to get him. Now, I have no doubt that if this trade were to happen, he would instantaneously figure it out with Patrick Mahomes and start to look like a god, because that just seems to be the Cleveland Browns' luck. But I don't think the Chiefs are going to be willing to give up much more than a 4th and probably toss in an extra day 3 draft pick. Might not be what you want to hear, but you're not getting a 1st. You're not getting a 2nd. You might get a 3rd, but chances are if you get a 3rd, you probably have to send a draft pick back to Kansas City, like a 5th or a 6th or something. So let me know what you think about trading Cooper. I always love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Before we get on out of here, quick shout out to the Brown and Orange Club. Tim Green, Mike Dibble, Jeremy Stallman, Slow But Sure, David Botner, Jared Brandt, James Harper, Papa T, Joseph Deporte, Mike, Ray Bidding, Dr. No, Eli Green, John Porter, Scorpion, Max T. Thank you guys so much for supporting us here. If you want to get shout-outs for the entire 2024 season, $50 super chat. We add your name to the club, and we'll give you shout-outs all year long. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed our content, make sure to like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.